Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. My friend Mohamed Latib is a teacher, higher education administrator, consultant, speaker, author, and entrepreneur. He's also a leading expert in something called customer experience. You know, that emotional high or low you get depending upon the transaction you've had with a good or service, whether it's been positive or negative. In the healthcare industry, it's called patient satisfaction. In retail, it's called customer satisfaction. But customer experience is something quite different. Here to explain is Mohamed Latib, Dr. Mohamed Latib, founder and CEO of CX University, the only online customer experience education program on the internet. Welcome, Mohamed, to the Entrepreneurs Network. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you very much, Rick.
I've known you a long time. I think it's fair to say that you're an educator at heart, and that your new venture, CX University, is a combination of your entrepreneurial spirit as well as your passion for teaching. You seem to have found the right nexus in life. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair indeed, and if I may expound on the question in the form of an answer, it is a combination of a series of threads that come out of my background as a professor at a university, and yes, by heart and by passion I'm a teacher, but I've also straddled the corporate world at the same time as I have engaged students in the learning process, and found with the combination of my academic teaching background and corporate experience that the time has arrived for some confluence to occur, and that confluence is in the form of the birth of an institution that I'm calling CX University, where the focus is indeed going to be on educating people about customer experience.
As soon as we can figure out what that is, customer experience that is, where did the idea for CX University come from?
Well, it came out of what I just described to you because of my immersion in the corporate world with the kinds of solutions that I've been able to participate in implementing through my previous company.
Yeah, but it could have been a bricks and mortar company. It could have been a partnership you might have had with an existing college or university or other institute of learning. Why did you decide it would be virtual, online, and all the courses, that I understand, are online or will be online?
They will indeed, most of our course offerings will be online, and part of the rationale for that is indeed to make available to the population that we want to educate the flexibility and the convenience that adults look for. A lot of the folks that we're looking to educate are corporate executives who live very busy lives, and consequently they look for convenience and access, and the internet provides us this remarkable opportunity to reach out to people wherever they are and for them to take advantage of the opportunities whenever they want.
I said it's the only one of its kind on the internet. Was that a correct statement?
To the best of my knowledge, it's the only non-degree granting customer experience education program that I am aware of. I would not claim as being the only, because I'm not aware of anyone else, but to the best of my knowledge, yes.
And what's the relationship between CX University and the Customer Experience Professionals Association?
Well, I'm sure you're going to ask me to explain customer experience in just a moment, but more recently...
Oh, did I miss that?
No, you didn't, but I'll come back. I'll come back to that. Over the last 5 to 8 years, there's been an evolution in the corporate world with much more attention being given to the phenomena of customer experience. And because of that kind of energy and widespread recognition of this phenomena, a couple of people who are considered thought leaders in this area decided that a non-profit accrediting association would be an appropriate organization to develop and establish a presence where they can accredit and oversee the discipline of customer experience and the practice of customer experience. My relationship with them goes to their very inception, where I became a corporate member. And as a result of my corporate membership, I've participated quite actively in the affairs of CXPA, and now feel fully aligned with their agenda in terms of defining what the discipline of customer experience is and delivering an education that's congruent with that rubric that they've developed. So my relationship is a fairly intimate one.
Is theirs a virtual organization as well? They have online tests for certification?
They do. They're a virtual organization. They make available to the members numerous benefits. One of the significant benefits, apart from providing an open source for education and knowledge, they do certify people as customer experience professionals, and they administer and manage the testing that's required to be successfully completed to be certified as a professional.
And CX University is a prep to take those tests for certification?
Yes, CX University is going to offer options for people who feel a need to be better educated, courses that they can take. For those that feel they have enough experience in education, they can come in and try out what the tests might be like and get some kind of a practice of what they can expect. It's not unlike what we as parents would want our children to do to get prepared for SATs,
Yes.
to get into college or for graduate school.
Good analog. All right, so let me double back. What is the difference between customer experience and patient satisfaction, customer satisfaction, phrases that have been around for a long time?
Exactly what you've just said. You've used the term satisfaction. From my perspective, satisfaction is one significant component of the totality of the experience people have. And so for me, customer experience or patient experience or experience per se is a far more complex phenomena than satisfaction. And so what we have understood over time is that if we truly want to fully understand human behavior, so that you can build relationships with people over time and intimate relationships that result in higher business performance from the corporate standpoint, a much more satisfied and loyal following from the customer population standpoint, that we address the complexity that experience presents itself to us with.
This may be a rather mundane example of it, but what occurs to me as you're describing it is Coke. Coke is a strong brand. If I enjoy my Coke and the Coke I've become accustomed to over many, many years, there's a certain taste, a certain relationship I have with that brand. When they tried to change the Coke formula, all of a sudden it was not a good experience. It was a bad customer experience. Is that a fair analogy to try to explain the relationship I have with a brand or a product or a service or a transaction?
Well, that's part of it.
It's a visceral
Yeah,
kind of
that's part of it. I think what you said, Rick, is you've given an example of the response to the use of a product.
Yes.
So the consumption of Coke, in terms of its taste, its texture, its temperature, has an impact on the human palate and the consumption experience. But there are a whole bunch of attendant variables that are important to the human mind, such as, for instance, does Coke adopt and adhere to an ethical set of principles in its business practice? That impacts how people respond to the brand, not just the taste itself.
No, not at all.
Does it contribute to the well-being of society at large? That impacts how we perceive the brand. So there are a number of variables that come into play when one thinks about customer experience as a whole.
But from what I've read, the anatomy of customer experience starts with the transaction, the interaction, and then you work your way back to map the experience. Is that the analysis that goes into it?
I think that's an important part of the analysis because experience is more than just a transactional engagement. It is a relationship engagement, and companies that understand that they need to move beyond transaction are actually then entering into the experience space. I am reminded of a wonderful publication in the Harvard Business Review, an article and subsequently a book that a couple of authors, one of whom I know, they coined the term the experience economy. They're beginning to argue that the legacy of service as we've known it in the past is not what's relevant today, that we need to migrate towards a state where we can actually stage experiences so that people can feel fully engaged in everything that they do. And to the extent that companies can deliver that engagement, they would be able to harness the kind of loyalty that they all seek about their brands.
Is customer experience, or the level of customer experience, dependent to some extent on generational differences? I think millennials might relate more to the kind of thing we're talking about here, whereas a boomer, even an older person, traditionalist, might be quite satisfied with, give me fair value for whatever I'm paying, thank you very much, that's a transaction, and I go on with my life, rather than becoming attached. Now, having said that, again, I'm having a difficult time getting my hands around what customer experience is, because maybe to your point, it's a number of different things, a number of variables.
Sure.
But in the literature, what is journey mapping, and how is that used to understand customer experience and to teach customer experience?
So let me respond to, I think you've asked me two questions. One is what is
Probably at
journey
least two,
mapping,
yes.
and one whether or not there can be generational differences that can be identified and therefore that play into this whole phenomenon of experience. The answer to both questions is this. Yes, there are generational differences, and so when we go out to try and capture or garner insights around the experience that we would identify across generations, we would find variation. And it's therefore important for companies to understand that we call them in the customer experience lexicon, we refer to that as having personas. People that have different motivations, different values, different goals. We see that in generations across the spectrum. And so one has to customize and understand each of those particular personas in order to deliver an exceptional experience. The way we get to that is to craft journey maps. When we craft journey maps, we actually recognize that there are differences across segments of human beings, and therefore we tailor the mapping process to ensure that we've actually identified the touch points that are relevant to your generation or my generation or a different generation, so that what the organization that's ostensibly aspiring to deliver excellence recognizes the differences and fits to match the kind of things that are being called for.
Mohamed, is that asking too much of a retail clerk, fast food person who might be making, with the new minimum wage, possibly $15 an hour? Now all of a sudden they've got to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, priest, rabbi, gestalt to understand what's happening in the next 3 minutes in my interaction with this customer.
So it really doesn't matter. And what's interesting is those front customer-facing people that you've just referenced clearly play a very important role in what you experience in your interactions with them. But so does the accountant and the IT person in the background that you haven't touched at all, because the kinds of background activities they're involved with cascades into how the front-facing employee or associate behaves. And so it's important for us to understand that it's a whole journey, and it covers the entire spectrum of organizational variables that come into play. Clearly, the customer-facing associate plays a very significant role because it's a very palpable engagement that leaves a mark on a customer.
You know, for years, and you know this better than I because you've taught the subject in various management courses, there's been this split, this schism between manufacturing, operations, and sales. And if they talked to one another at all, it was always screaming and hollering at one another. Your point is that the relationship has to be transparent, a great deal more fluid, continuous between and among all of the aspects of delivering a product or service. I guess that's your point.
And more. Yeah. It's recognizing the fact that organizations are fairly complex entities.
Yes.
And they get set in routines, and part of their routines is to work within silos. And when you have silos, you clearly are going to have dysfunctionalities as it pertains to the delivery of an engaged experience. So one has to then think about the mahogany suite. Is the CEO or the senior executives in a company committed to a customer experience strategy? And if they are, then by definition, they will begin to look to those silos and see how they can break them, because frankly, in this contemporary world we live in, regardless of what generation we're talking about, the collaborative ethic is very important in building a successful business.
Well, it wouldn't be a mahogany suite. In today's economy, it'd be a laminate, maybe plywood, or it should be.
Or a digital suite where we don't get
precisely,
to see each other. Yeah.
Are there certain industries that seem to be picking up on this more than others?
Absolutely.
Healthcare comes to mind, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all organizations across industry boundaries are beginning to recognize this fact, and this is important to understand, and that is that your customer is an asset, and it's an asset that needs to be leveraged, regardless of how we define that customer. So let's define the customer for a hospital system. That customer is a patient. The customer for a nonprofit membership organization,
Yes.
the customer is a member. For an institution of higher education, it's a student. For a business, it's a customer as we traditionally know it. So we will have variations, but the phenomena of experience is across the board. So even in healthcare, we think about patient experience, and I know that, for instance, professionals in healthcare would think about the care. Clearly, care is important.
Yes.
But you know, if you talk to a patient, the patient will tell you, yes, of course, my health is important, but so is the mannerism and bedside behavior of the caretakers. That's part of what creates this gestalt that we call experience. And I would submit that the healthcare industry is lagging, but certainly on board as I see it. The Cleveland Clinic is a terrific example of a prestigious healthcare institution that's invested quite a bit of its energy and resources in building a patient-centric healthcare system. We're now hearing about patient experience and patient satisfaction conferences. We're similarly having conferences that focus on customers. The industry that I think is lagging behind is higher education. I know that because I actually just completed a journey map for an institution of higher education, a student experience journey map, and that brings me somewhat long-windedly to your second part of the question about journey mapping. Journey mapping, quite simply, is trying to identify the actual journey that an individual takes and all of the interaction points that can have an influence on that person's experience. It could be minimal, it could be maximal. The idea is to identify that path and then determine what's more or less important to create the kind of experience that a company is looking for.
Are we seeing customer experience being taught, being integrated into any of the business degree programs at the undergraduate or graduate levels around the country?
The answer is yes. I think there are a couple of institutions that I'm aware of that have actually formally introduced customer experience as a subset of existing programs.
Yes.
I don't know of any institution of higher education at the undergraduate or the graduate level offering a degree program in customer experience. And that may be because, you know, customer experience has sort of come out of the marketing discipline. So consumer behavior might be the umbrella label for customer experience in formal higher education programs. I imagine that the language of customer experience as we know it in practice will surface within academia, and institutions will start delivering formal programs.
I've been on the planet a long time, and I've been a consultant a long time, and I've seen these fads come and go. I'm not suggesting that customer experience is a fad, but having said that, let me ask the question, is it possible that this is just another fad? Again, we went from customer satisfaction now to customer experience, and as we move farther into the digital age, where we're not interacting with human beings so much, but it's my machine interacting with your machine, and it's, if those two machines get along together, then that's the customer experience, and they are happy, but we're not necessarily happy. You get my point.
I do.
Is the technology going to interject itself now into this relationship we've been talking about and ruin everything? And then we'll come up with another phrase to describe that phenomenon.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question, and one that harkens me back to the phenomena of human behavior. You know, from the time we've recorded knowledge, our attempt has always been to predict human behavior. And quite honestly, I think we're continuing to struggle on how to predict human
We're very
behavior
complex
because it's
people.
so variable.
Yeah.
Behavior is
Yeah.
so variable. So, you know, what we're trying to do is predict human behavior, and to the extent that that remains a challenge, this will not be a fad. What we have done is we've taken, and I made reference to customer service of the past,
Yes.
to another level of understanding. We're trying to really understand how human beings behave in this very contemporary, and I should say quite explicitly, technology-enabled world, where the customer now has the ability to be able to command so much more than was possible 5 years ago. And so when you empower customers to have what they have today, organizations have to be sensitive to that power and be responsive, because customers have this remarkable power of being able to walk. So if I'm not happy with the experience I've had, or if I'm not satisfied with my interactions with you, I can go somewhere else. We have options.
Yeah. Personal experience. A pharmacy. I won't name the name of the pharmacy, but the first initial is C. You have to wait in line for an interminable amount of time to get a script. In every other way, they're fine. The prices are good. The selection is good. They've always been kind and helpful to me when I've needed problems, because they have all of our. But that one experience of having to wait in line and stand there while everybody is grumbling, complaining about the same thing. Why don't they put another cashier up? Why? They're wasting my time. That's a bad customer experience, at least in that one aspect of the relationship. All other aspects, it's been fine. I would leave C to go to R, except that C has all of my scripts and my history, my entire pharmacological history. How do we deal with that?
Well, you've identified a typical disenchantment. Look, all of us go shopping at supermarkets, drugstores, department stores, and if there's a long line ahead of us, it gets frustrating. We get impatient, we get irritated, and can be a negative word-of-mouth exposure that may not be good.
It's not just the waiting, it's the sense that they just don't care.
Yes,
They're taking me for granted.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So companies have recognized that reality, and to the extent that they can optimize the checkout process, they of course are doing it. But companies have gone beyond that. And you asked a question earlier about whether they are lagging or forward-looking industries. I would say to you that perhaps the industry that has adopted the technology and the phenomenon of customer experience to heart is the retail industry. And so if you go into, for instance, a Nordstrom or one of the other big chain stores in the country.
Noted for their service.
Noted for their service, but also noted for not having you in line at all. Today, because of the capabilities we have with our mobile devices, I can check you out right outside the dressing room.
Sure.
You know, you don't have to step into line anymore at all. And that clearly is something that organizations are sensitive to, and it doesn't only apply, by the way, in department stores. Take healthcare. Let's go back to healthcare as an example. Do you know how frustrating it is for the patient and the family to sit in an emergency room waiting for treatment when that individual is suffering?
Yes, I do.
Healthcare organizations are recognizing this and now making public commitments that you will not wait any longer than a certain amount of time to be seen by a healthcare professional. That's another recognition of the fact that customers, patients, people have the power to be able to affect a brand negatively if the experience they expect is not available to them.
I don't disagree with that, but there's another force at work, and it's called cost.
Yes, sir.
And so they've got to reduce the cost. And the only way to reduce the cost is to automate one of the residual benefits of automation is I don't have to wait as long. They are able, because of the wonderful devices, to process me more quickly. I just had a thought and I lost it. Amazon, right? A new phenomenon has changed retailing, along with QVC and all of the other folks. Is Amazon a good, in your opinion, or others like it? You don't have to speak to Amazon specifically. Good examples of or the opportunity for a higher level of customer experience? There are fewer, I was about to say there are fewer moving parts, but I guess that's not true. There are as many moving parts as there are in a traditional retailing delivery system.
Well, just think about the example you've raised. Amazon is actually a good example to perhaps offer a deeper understanding of this field that we're talking about. You've just changed your journey. So if you're going to go to Amazon, you're experiencing a digital journey.
Right.
If I go to Nordstrom's, to a brick and mortar environment,
High touch.
I'm experiencing a physical journey, right?
Yes.
Now, in the physical journey, let's take the example of checkout for just a moment, right? I have the same checkout concerns in both journeys. The difference, of course, is in the one case, I'm talking to human beings. In the other case, I am hoping that I can speedily be processed by machines, by software. My response for having to wait in a brick and mortar environment or to have some kind of a hiccup in the digital environment would be the same. I'd walk out feeling angry, upset, and frustrated if it didn't meet my expectations.
And they're both high touch, but in a different way.
Yeah, it's digital high touch versus human
digital,
high touch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just as even more satisfying, I think, on the digital, because I get these notices that the order has been placed, it's been confirmed. They tell me approximately when it's going to be delivered. They give me another alert that it is going to be delivered. It'll be there in 4 minutes. Wait at the door. I'm using hyperbole to make the point, but they stay in touch.
Yes.
And if there's a problem, you just put a sticker on it and send it back.
I think the thread that you're presenting here, Rick, has to do with this ongoing dissonance we've had between technology and human beings.
Yes.
And that intersection will always be a subject of much discourse and debate and probing and research so that we can create the kind of balance that allows us to be able to take advantage of the advances we make in technology and still be a high-touch, present a high-touch reality.
I totally agree with all of that. I don't want to go off in a warp of some kind, but once again, because we are a humanity now able to manipulate emotions, feelings, well-being, sense of well-being, and so on, it seems to me that those who are providing products and services will soon be in a position where they can pretty well predict what our likely reaction experience is going to be, for better or worse, because they can play mind games with us now.
Well, you've used language like manipulate and mind games.
Yes.
Of course, our hope is that companies that adopt an ethical stance in everything they do would not think of themselves as manipulating.
Mohamed's standards of ethics are changing these days as well. What was verboten not too long ago.
Indeed, but I'm the penultimate optimist, Rick. My belief is that if you conduct yourself ethically, business will follow.
Well, if CX University is the success I believe it will be,
yes, sir.
You will have changed the trajectory of all that bad stuff that is likely to happen. I hope so anyway. Where do you want CX University to be 3 years from now?
Well, I'd like to, at the very outset, establish a presence of CX University as an institution of excellence that provides the most contemporary thought and knowledge of customer experience, and to make it available not only to the nation here, but to take it global. My aspiration is to provide the opportunities that we have had here in building understanding of customer experience to the entire globe, because human beings in any other part of the world have similar kinds of aspirations for wanting to be treated in a manner that's appropriate.
I know you published quite a bit on this subject. Is there a book in the offing?
It is my hope, once I find the time, to actually produce a book. I have snippets of it already in place, but like all books that require significant investment of time and energy,
Yes.
it's certainly on my radar
Yes,
screen.
everything in its good time.
Yes, sir.
The best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for
for the
being here.
opportunity.
My guest today has been Dr. Mohamed Latib, founder, CEO of CX University, the only online provider of education on the subject of customer experience. If you'd like more information, go to www.cxuniversity.com. Until next time, this is the Entrepreneurs Network. I am Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves